Hello, 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 and thank you so much for pressing play on the latest edition of the Michigan Soccer Central podcast, your somewhat weekly dip into the world's game being played right here in the Great Lakes State. How's it going? My name's Robert Kerr, your host of the program once again. I hope everybody had a good holiday season and a happy new year. I got lots of gifts, most of them good, but got myself a case of the COVID, so please excuse my lack of a haircut here. It's like the olden days of 2020 up here. Had to cancel a lot of plans, including a visit to the barber shop, but no worries. We got lots of good stuff on the show this week. It is first week of January, so we are in indoor soccer season. So the current events playing lots of stuff going on, even though we are in the cold season. There's some futsal going on. Rapid City FC out in Grand Rapids. Um, their second season kicked off just before the new year. They won the Major League Indoor Soccer Championship in their debut season, and they kicked it off right in their debut of their second season. They beat the Ohio Extreme 25-2. The Muskegon Risers are well underway in the M Major Arena Soccer League 2. They have a game coming up this weekend. Also, this weekend, Detroit City FC women are getting underway in the PASL on Saturday at the Detroit City Field House. So, plenty of boarded indoor action going on here in Michigan. Speaking of city related things, we got a very fun and exciting feature interview on the program this week. The brand new incoming men's head coach, Danny Dichio, joined me this evening, and we had a great conversation talking about his move to Detroit, what the job means to him, a little bit of background and some stories from his playing career. So a very pleasant conversation with him. Before we jump to our conversation with Danny Dichio, please give us a follow at MI Soccer Central across all the major social media platforms. Check out this show. We got over 130 something episodes now on all of your favorite audio platforms. And then also check out, we are putting our YouTube episodes up. We are partnered with We Are Soccer. So this episode, likely, if you're watching it, it's on the We Are Soccer YouTube channel. So hang on in there. I'm very excited to present our feature interview this week with Detroit City FC's head coach, Danny Dichio, here on the Michigan Soccer Central podcast. Welcome back here for this week's feature interview. I'm very lucky to be joined by a man whose storied playing career spanned about 15 years and multiple continents, starting off at Queen's Park Rangers in the UK, making stops at clubs like Sunderland, West Brom, Millwall, with some side quests in Italy at Sampdoria and Lecce. He wrapped up his career stateside as a member of the fledgling and new-founded Toronto FC. He wrapped up his playing career and kicked off his new career in management there, spending 10 plus years at Toronto, the last few years at Sacramento Republic as a very successful assistant coach, and is now Detroit City FC's brand new head coach. Thank you for joining me, Mr. Coach Danny Dichio. Thank you for joining the Michigan Soccer Central podcast, sir.
Thank you for having me on. No, really looking forward to it. Looking forward to the new year. Happy New Year to everyone. Can't wait to get started.
Yeah, first podcast of the new year. Thank you for joining and kicking us off strong here on the program. I understand you're not quite here yet. You're going to be here in Detroit in just a few weeks. You're wrapping up things in California, from what I understand.
Yeah, just kind of tying up stuff and just getting rid of some loose ends and some bits and pieces that I have to do before moving back to the East Coast. The family are going to stay here for a little bit longer, but I'm coming in next Wednesday full time. So as well as preparing the team, having to look at places for a new house where the family join me in late spring. So looking forward to getting to Michigan. Looking forward to getting pre-season started, but just getting in the last bits of that California warm weather in the winter before I head back to the cold. But I heard it's not been that too bad at the moment in Michigan.
No, it was not a white Christmas here, and it wasn't until this week where it actually got cold, but and it really hasn't been that serious just yet. So maybe Michigan winter is waiting for you to
Yeah,
join
yes,
us.
for sure. Yeah.
But you spent a decade plus in Toronto. I'm sure it gets pretty gnarly up there.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm used to it. The 6 foot of snow and the -10, -15. Yeah, bring it all on. I'm used to that.
Compared to the west side of Michigan, there's only a couple. Detroit area only really gets a couple big snows a year.
Okay.
Knock on the wood. Not to jinx us or anything, but we're here to talk about your new position as head coach of Detroit City FC. I guess what drew you to Detroit? I mean, this is a big jump for you coming from an assistant out at a very successful team, now taking the #1 spot here. What brought you out here?
Well, listen, the last 2 years at SAC has been really successful for the club and myself in just pushing me on to an understanding of, I think you're ready to be a head coach now. It's always been in the back of my mind, prepping myself, just getting to know what it actually takes, the ins and outs of coaching, but also preparing and an understanding of how to manage a team, but also manage all the personalities and egos that are in that team. But I think the last 2 years has really given me the confidence and the belief that I'm ready. I feel I'm at the right age. I feel I've had the right foundation in the last 12 years or so in preparing me for this. And as I said, I can't wait to get started. It's a big job that I have on my hands, but a job that I'm really relishing.
At your unveiling at the Detroit City Fieldhouse in mid-December, you referenced a couple stories from when you came as a visiting coach. What is it? Are you really looking forward to going from that away dressing room to the home one?
Yeah, I mean, going back to the story, it was a real eye opener for me coming to Keyworth for the first time. And you hear a lot of stories, and I think they're a little bit unfair about Detroit. I really do. So we were coming into Detroit with Sacramento a couple of years ago, and Detroit had come into the league, and they had such a great home record. We knew that the atmosphere was electric, but we didn't really know what the stadium was like itself. So we turned up on the Thursday. We managed to train on the Friday, the day before the game. And we turned up at Keyworth, and there was all these school kids that were on the field, and it was like sweaters on the ground, empty bottles of water and drink. And we were like, what's going on here? Is this the right place we've turned up to? And we actually had a good little bit of banter with some of the kids who were telling us that we'd have to wait to get on and train. And we were kind of telling them, no, we're a professional team. It's our time to train. And they were like, no, we have to finish the game. And we had a good back and forth banter with those kids there. But I think we were kind of struck as what's going on here. And then when we turned up for the game on a Saturday, the whole stadium had just been lit up and kind of remodeled in a way to kind of mirror a lower league English, maybe Division 2, Division 3 stadium. And we were super excited about playing there. That just sitting in the locker rooms, hearing the fans walking above us and outside the locker room, and just the close proximity of the supporters and everyone around the stadium getting ready for the game was a real highlight for me and kind of really reminded me of being back home in England. So that was a big pull for me. We were lucky to get the win that day. We got a good 2-0 win. I think it was one of the first away victories at Keyworth for a long, long time because they had such a good record there, and we were happy to get the result. But it was a good eye opener for me in the sense that this is something that you can really be proud of and something unique within the league. And I spoke about how many other clubs within the USL Championship and League One would pay a lot of money to have that week in, week out at home stadiums. And I think it's very natural and organic that we have that at Detroit, and we need to really use that to our advantage this year. And I know they've done that in the last 2 years, but we need to push it on even more because, as I said, there's a lot of teams that would pray for having an atmosphere and seats in the stadium filled like we do at Keyworth.
Yeah, it is pretty um laudable how the club is able to turn that community stadium into what it is on a game day. It's kind of a night and day experience between a weekday and a match day there, how they dress it up. And you said it looks kind of like a second or third division spot in the UK. And for those not familiar with your playing career, what divisions did you play most of your playing trade?
So I was lucky enough to play in the Premier League for most of my career, and then Championship, which is the second tier in England for a small part of it as well. I was lucky enough to play for some big clubs as well with big fan base that were very community driven as well. So I was happy with that, and I think again that brings that kind of similarity to what we have at Detroit, the uniqueness, the authenticity of a locally driven community club. A lot of people in the stadiums that are very knowledgeable about the game. Even as an away staff sitting on the bench, the hecklers behind us, and even the crazy gang over the far side were giving our players a lot of stick that day, but all in good stead, you know. So I think that environment, that atmosphere was what I was kind of pining for since I've been into North America. And we had it a lot at Toronto FC in the early days, in the expansion days. And again, I think in MLS as well, there's a lot of clubs that would really, really love to have that.
You were a player on day one for Toronto FC, correct?
Correct. Yes, I was there in the expansion year in 2007. Again, a very blue collar town, a lot of different eclectic mixes of nationalities in Toronto. I'm sure you know, whether it be European, African, Central American, Southern American. So they've been pining for a professional club in that city for a long time. And when it eventually came, I was very fortunate to be a part of it. And the first game where I got my first goal at Toronto is a game that I'll take with me to my grave, because it was just such a great occasion and memory, getting our first goal, getting our first win as well. And you rarely get that in North America. So to be a part of that was a dream come true for me.
I can imagine. Is that true? Also, you scored the first goal and got the first red card for Toronto.
Correct. And it was only afterwards in the kind of press media scrum that I learned about a certain legend that is very big in Detroit as well, and that was Gordy Howe. And one of the journalists in the scrum asked me, he said, "Hey, Danny, great game. Did you know you scored the Gordy Howe hat trick today?" And I kind of stuttered a little bit, and I said, "Who's Gordy Howe?" Because I'd never heard of him in soccer, in football. So the goss from the journalists around me at the time were kind of very, very loud, and I kind of realized
In
that
Canada, right?
yeah, in Canada as well. I realized that I made a bad mistake. I was like, "Oh, this guy must be a legend of some kind." And they said, "No, this is Gordy Howe, the ice hockey player." And I think it was a goal, a fight, and an ejection was the old Gordy Howe hat trick. And I've seen recently they're developing a Gordy Howe bridge somewhere. Is it in Detroit?
Yeah, just south of the city, because there's only one bridge to Canada in the city, and so they're adding a brand new second one named after him.
Okay, that's fantastic. Yeah, so that's kind of my Gordy Howe story from my first game in Toronto, and I'm sure I upset a few people and fans, but I think they just put it down to my English knowledge of ice hockey.
Yeah, that's definitely a badge of honor. Bringing it back to Keyworth though, I was kind of curious about the style that you kind of bring with you, and what the dimensions of Keyworth Stadium might impact those plans.
Well, the thing is with Keyworth is I think it's such a small field as it is, and it's a really tight field. So I've spoken to a lot of coaches throughout my time, and I also research a lot of interviews and listen to people about speaking on developing a style of play, playing a certain way on whatever field you're playing on, whether it's a small field, a big field, an artificial field, a grass field, bad conditions. I think you have to have a certain style of play and behavior, the way your team wants to play. I think it's adjustable and flexible due to either conditions or the opponents, but I think your principles have to stay the same throughout, and that's something we're going to be working on in the early weeks of our preseason. It's just getting the players to understand how we want to be with and without the ball. We definitely want to try and give the players a little bit more confidence in possessing the ball, especially when playing out of the back, but also giving them the autonomy to make those decisions and what they see in front of them. I'm not a joystick coach where I'm dictating them what to do when they get on the ball, but we will work on certain plays and certain actions with the systems we're playing in that will give those guys the decisions that are on the ball, or players in front of them to be making that movement in front of them as well, to help them with those decisions.
Obviously, Trevor James, the coach, now a GM. Did you have any kind of relationship with him before this job, or did it all start with him reaching out with this position?
No, I knew of Trevor from his Galaxy days when he came over with David Beckham. I knew that he was a guy that had a vast knowledge, and just speaking to him whenever we kind of cross paths, it was normally just pretty cordial and hello, how you doing and stuff like that. So there was no real relationship prior to us talking about the job. He actually reached out to our GM and president, Todd Donovan, who he was actually with at LA Galaxy back in the day, and Todd was another player that I'd played with from my days at Toronto FC. So he kind of made the connection there, and he had set up a phone call and just asked about my interest about becoming a head coach and the reasoning why.
Yeah, so your number one job, first head coaching spot at this level. Like, what does this job mean in for your career?
I think it's a big opportunity for me. I feel that I'm ready for this opportunity. I think Detroit is the perfect club for my next step into where I want to eventually get to, and hopefully I can coach at the highest level possible. That's what I really want to do one day. But I see this as an opportunity for me to really step into my own coaching philosophy, which I want to play attacking football. I want to play aggressive football. I want to score goals. I want to entertain the crowd, which I think every coach wants to, but there's a certain structure and system of play that we have to abide by. And this is going to be a big plan of mine. Whether we play a certain system and formation that is going to be different for the Detroit fans to see. But for me personally, this is me stepping out of my comfort zone a little bit in being an assistant coach, but stepping into the fire now of being a head coach and being responsible for the actions of 20 to 22 players, but also for the results on and off the pitch with Detroit City FC. It lies with me at the end of the day, and that's what I've taken on. And I know it's a big quest for me, but also a great opportunity that I'm super excited about.
From what you're saying, it sounds like you're definitely willing to be flexible with how you're doing things. Like what was the kind of the best style or the most success as an assistant that you enjoyed your teams playing in when you were an assistant coach? How did you like the team that you were working on to play?
Well, we had a really good group of players for the last 2 years at Sacramento, and a big part of me joining Sacramento was helping Mark Briggs in totally restructuring the team that he had 3 years ago and 4 years ago, where they struggled a little bit to get into the playoffs, and Mark had asked to help with the recruitment of players, in bringing in new talent, talent that I've obviously scouted in League One, um, talent that we've been kind of recommended from Europe as well, and it was a real eye opener to me, because we can see the talents of players, whether you're watching them on a screen, whether you're watching them live. But the big part for us in rebuilding that Sacramento team was bringing in the right characters, bringing in the right personalities. So speaking to these players in interviews, on the phones, really trying to get a good grasp of who they were as a person, first of all, speaking to ex-coaches, teammates of these players that we were bringing in, was a massive help to us. And I think that was a real big push for our success in bringing in the right characters. And that was something that Mark had spoken to me about, that he felt that they didn't have in the previous 3 or 4 years that he started coaching with Sacramento.
Is that the same sort of thing? Do you think that do you foresee a big turnover in the squad here in Detroit moving in here?
Well, there's certain factors, Rob, where players are on guaranteed contracts or options have been taken up already. But I really feel that there's also a good base of players that are already here, a good foundation of guys that have kind of played together over the past 2 or 3 years. And let's not forget, this is a team, a group of players that have come up from the lower leagues to the professional league and have held their own. So any coach coming into a group of players that have done so well, and trying to blow it up would be crazy in my mind. I think there's a lot of change that we can bring in, but again, going back to how we develop the squad at Sacramento, it has to be the right personnel that we're bringing in as well, Rob. So it has to be the right position, the right personality, the right demeanor. I've spoken to certain players already, numerous players that they're hesitant about coming to Michigan or to Detroit, and I haven't even got into talking about football with them, and it's an instant no for me straight away. If you're not wanting to come to Detroit to play football, then I'm not even going to talk about football with these guys, because a big part of our club value and philosophy is you're representing the club, the city, and the community. And if you're hesitating about coming to live in Detroit, then I'm sorry, I don't care how good of a player you are. We don't want you, or I don't want you to be part of this team. So there's a good group here already, and I feel that we're going to bring in 4 to 5 new players. Trevor's done an excellent job in the off season in already maneuvering with a couple of deals that we're probably going to announce in the next 2 or 3 days, and the fans will see a real tweak that will help this group push on even further, I think.
So that's interesting that there's some players that you talk to that were hesitant about Detroit. Were those domestic players or internationals that had Detroit hesitancy?
They were actually domestic players, Rob, which kind of, it didn't worry me, but it frustrated me, because I think there's this misconception of Detroit. And there was another big part of me wanting to come to Detroit, because when we were in Detroit 2 years ago, which I spoke about at Keyworth, we were actually staying downtown, and I'd had numerous walks downtown, and walked around where all obviously the Tigers Stadium is, and that area around Jefferson, and they've actually renovated the city in a really great way. And I think it's only gonna keep improving with the money that's being invested in the city, and the people want the reconstruction to be super nice and keep its character, and I'm all for that. And that really impressed me when I was in town 2 years ago, and it impressed me again when I brought my wife into town just before Christmas. And we both felt this has a great energy about it, this city. We felt that this is a city that we're willing to bring our family to and be part of.
That's very exciting, and that's interesting. There's a with what's going on with the Lions, what happened there, and then just it's a cliche in general, the Detroit versus everybody. Um,
Yeah,
that's funny that that's probably still valid from what you're saying. That there is a hesitancy or a bit of a um, uh, what do you call it? Preconceived notions about Detroit that still exists, and then within the player pool. So that's interesting. So you've already faced some adversity, and you haven't even gotten into town yet.
for sure. And I think that's part of it. And I've spoken to Trevor about it as well. When you're trying to compete with certain markets in bringing players in, whether it's USL clubs that have been around for a long time, Rob, that have um, a stadium, a fan base, a training facility, can obviously offer a little bit more money, um, and you're trying to compete with those markets. It's tough, but again, it goes back to the personality and the character of the players. Do they want to come and play first team football? Do they want to be part of a group of hungry players that are playing in front of 7,000 crazy fans and supporters week in, week out, that love the community, love the club, and feel real pride in representing it? Or do you want to go somewhere where there may be a smaller market, but you have kind of all the lavish details of a nice locker room, training ground, and stuff like that? That's up for the player to decide, and I'm never gonna step in the way of that. But that's not the type of player I really want to work with.
Uh, Amongst your stops, what was the favorite locker room you were a part of, or it? And in a second part, they might overlap, but what's a locker room you'd like to emulate that you were in?
Great question. I mean, I've been in a lot of good locker rooms, but I think my time up at Sunderland was probably one of the most successful times in my career, and it stemmed from having a real players manager in charge. His name was Peter Reid. Um, Coached at Everton, coached at Man City. Sorry, played for Everton, played for England in the World Cup. He was part of that England team where Diego Maradona ran through the England defense and scored that unbelievable goal. And I used to give him stick because he was the midfielder that was meant to be keeping up with Maradona at the time. But a real players manager, and a guy that knew how to control different personalities and keep not only 1 to 11 happy in the roster, but also 12 to 20 happy. The guys that aren't playing that much, guys that are probably not the main starters. And I thought he had a really good grasp of that along with his staff. So that was probably one of the best guys that I played under, and the most successful teams I played with. We finished 7th in the Premier League 2 years on the trot.
And so, is that something that you hold into your kind of coaching mantra, try to emulate something like that?
Yeah, big time. I feel I'm a player's coach, Rob. I feel I'm a guy that knows how to respond to different personalities and characters. I know when a player needs an arm around the shoulder and there's something else going on in his life that's not connected to football. I'm not saying I'm a shrink or anything, but I feel that I have a good understanding of getting the best out of players from different backgrounds, different personalities, as said. And that's a big part of how we're going to build this new culture with this new group that's coming in to help assist the already existing group that have done so well at Detroit.
Um, as part of your playing career, were you kind of like a more of a technical player? I saw that you played for Millwall, and they have a reputation of being a bit rough and tumble. Like, kind of, where do you land on that balance between technical and physical play?
Well, I was a big striker. So in the old days in England, the 4-4-2 formation was apparent with most teams, and most teams had a really big striker and a smaller striker that just ran around underneath him and fed off all the scraps. And that was me, the big guy, kind of taking the hits and the blows and kind of assisting and laying off balls or setting up certain players for shots, and that was my role within the team. But most people that probably coached me or saw me play would say that I was pretty technical for a big man. The big man usually uses his head or his elbows to get through games, but I could do that, but I much preferred the ball at my feet. And you'll probably see that in the way that the team will try to play this year in keeping the ball down on the floor as much as possible, but understanding that there's a time and place when you get in certain areas that we want to put crosses in, that we will have to play a little bit more direct in the flanks to get past teams who are pressing us high.
Does the narrow pitch reduce or elevate the crossing game?
I think it reduces it a little bit because it's easier for teams to shift and slide across and make the field a little bit more compact. Now, I'm not saying it can't be done, because there's certain plays and certain movements where you're trying to fix, we call it fixing a team to one side to then switch out to the opposite side. So I think if you have the players that can do that, for sure, and that's something we will try to work on, because we're hopefully going to have a bigger guy up top this year who is good in the air as well as good with his feet, and who'll rely on crosses coming from the flanks.
You said there's going to be some announcements in the next couple of days with some players. So some things for DCFC fans to, or at least the men's team's fans to really be excited about coming up here.
Yeah, for sure. And as I said, Trevor's done a real good job in helping me identify certain players that we need. We knew last year that it was a little bit of a problem to score goals. There was certain games, I think you guys had a record last year for losing 1-0 in a lot of games last year. So we need to find a good balance, because I think there's some really good players already in that attack with the likes of Ben Morris and Maxi, who know where the goal is. So now it's just about surrounding them with a little bit better quality, but helping them get closer to the goal where they can be more effective. So that's really where we've tried to improve the squad. We've got a really nice player coming in from Europe, which I think the fans are going to be really happy with. He's an exciting player. And then we've got a really experienced guy coming in from USL who's scored a lot of goals already within the league, and hoping to bring out the confidence. And I've spoke to him on the phone a couple of times, which he showed a year or two ago. And with a team like ours and the way we're going to play, I think we can bring those goals back, where he's getting 10 to 15 goals.
As a player and as a manager, these answers might be different, but what is the most satisfying type of goal?
The ball that goes in the back of the net, or the ball that just goes over the line. No, I think when you look at different goals, and even going back to my career, Rob, like, I've scored goals. Even my first goal that I scored for Toronto, it wasn't the most prettiest of goals, but if you ask any Toronto FC fan, it was the first goal that's scored in the history of Toronto FC. So when you're looking back in it 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, they'll just remember that ball was over the line and went in, and it was part of our first ever victory. So we can all talk in dribs and drabs about, oh yeah, there was a great build up, it was a great overlap, great cross, great finish. But yes, that's an exciting way to score a goal. But at the end of the day, whatever gets you the result in scoring that goal is the most important thing. And it is a team affair for me, in the sense that whenever we score a goal, it's not only the goal scorer that scored that goal, it's everyone within the team. That's why you'll see the group celebrate together and really understand that it is a group thing, a we that have just scored that goal and not the me.
Yeah, I mean, you could score like 80 scrappy goals and be the best team in the league, right?
For sure. I mean, look at San Antonio 2 years ago, Rob. They weren't the prettiest team to watch, but they were efficient in what they did. They were very direct, and you
That
probably
was the
can't even,
most American way to play, in my opinion.
yeah. But it was efficient to them, and they've got a star on their jersey because they won a championship that year.
Very true, very true. Well, all the Detroit City FC fans listening to this show, I'm sure are excited. You're going to be in town here shortly, and it sounds like there's going to be some exciting player announcements. So lots of good things ahead for the men's team. And I just can't thank you enough for spending some time. Enjoy your last few days of California sunshine before coming to the northern Midwest.
Yeah, can't wait, can't wait. I got my big jacket ready, my snow boots ready, everything's ready.
Yeah, my one of my favorite gifts I got for Christmas were USB warmed slippers. So maybe there's some warming
Yeah, yeah,
slippers in your future.
yeah. I got to invest in some of them as well.
All right, thank you so much, Coach. Brand new incoming head coach for Detroit City FC, Danny Dichio. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to this week's guest, Coach Danny Dichio. Love to hear his stories of past glories as a player and what new ideas he's bringing, as well as dropping some hints on some exciting players coming to the Motor City this year. It's funny. I remembered him. I lived in England in the 90s, and I do remember him, on the rise with Les Ferdinand and Queens Park Rangers back in the 90s. And then once he was telling the story, I did recall his goal, the first ever goal for Toronto FC. So exciting times ahead, you feel, for Detroit City FC with a new coaching regime coming in. Be sure to follow us at MI Soccer Central across the social media platforms and be following along and subscribing and doing all that stuff. We are soccer YouTube channel, so just expanding this soccer family of ours. So thank you to Jenny Hajnaki for editing this program. Thank you to you, dear listener. And until next time, everybody, please enjoy your soccer.